welcome everybody to this exclusive Team HBXL broadcast for our software users. I'm Joanna Mulgrew and I'm the Managing Director of HBXL Building Software. And today I'm really pleased to introduce you to Simon Lazarus of the Better Business Group. Well, I say introduce, but some of you watching these may have watched a previous live broadcast, and Simon has joined us for one of those chats. In fact, you've done quite a few now with us, Simon, I think.
Yeah, I think actually this is number 8.
Number 8. Oh my goodness. Yeah. We've had lots to talk about, Simon's also a very highly valued Team HBXL coach, and you can find out about a complimentary session you can have with Simon that he's kindly offering all HBXL users at the end of this chat. So you can benefit from Simon's mentoring advice, FOC. He'll briefly explain his service to you so you can find out a little bit more before we kick off with our main topic today, which I'll explain more about in just a moment. So over to you, Simon.
Well, we are the original continual monitoring system for builders. We've been trading since 1995. We mentor builders, we help them win more work, we help them charge more. We actually work behind the scenes with them on every one of their own inquiries that they receive. And we give them quality structural leads to quote on.
Yeah.
On average, builders win about 13% more of their own inquiries into work, and they're able to charge about 15 to 20% more. And the average lead we've given this year is about 126,000. So they're all major jobs.
Yeah, they're quite chunky pieces of work. Okay, well, to the topic in hand today, which is why obviously people are here watching. So thanks for joining us, everybody. This month's broadcast is part 1 of a series actually on how to make more money on your building projects. It's obviously a process from start to finish making money on your projects, but this one is very specific to the earlier part of your project. Making more work, winning work, huge topic. We'll break it into some bite-sized chunks for you. And in this first conversation, we're specifically looking about how to choose your customers and the projects that you take on, and not the other way around. And without sounding too highbrow, we're going to be thinking about the psychology of charging more for the work that you do. Because for one reason, I'm not sure what the polite expression is, so maybe I should just, tell it like it is. It's not easy having the balls, should I say? Or maybe there's some women listening, so apologies for that expression. But it's not easy to quote more than you would normally feel comfortable quoting. And obviously, the big situation at the moment is the rising cost of living. Is affecting everybody, everything. And it could feel, I guess, wrong to start upping your prices amidst all of that. You might worry that it's going to impact the work that you're going to win if you put your prices up too much. But Simon is going to show us today that you can and you should charge the full value of the project, and that you will carry on winning work. And I think you'll get to the point where you'll wonder why you didn't apply these methods before. Simon, have I got that right?
Absolutely. I mean, the point to remember is everybody listening to this knows more expensive builders, so they themselves could be charging more. What I tell builders is, if you just go back over the years you've been in business, if you'd added 5% extra on every job, how much money would you have in the bank today? Yeah. And also, if you put your price up 5% today, how much extra money would you have in the bank in a few years' time?
Yeah. Well, that's got to be a big motivation, hasn't it, for everyone listening today, the viewers, and thinking of what you could have made. 5% extra doesn't sound particularly onerous, does it? It doesn't sound like a big deal, but that would all add up. So you've got to be thinking about the potential going forwards from this point onwards, just from following some of today's recommendations. So I think we should get started into the advice. Simon's actually given me a handy list of some of the tips, so I can kind of point us through today's session. And there's nuggets of gold in here. So the first point I think relates to the homeowner and their project, and are they a good fit for you on your mission to make more money? So Simon, tell us more.
Well, yes, you mustn't spend your valuable time just quoting on everything that comes your way. You need to decide the profile of the customer you want to be working for, the job values you're comfortable with, the type of work you're confident to undertake. So you must pre-qualify the lead. The first thing you have to ascertain is how many quotes are they getting and where are they getting them from. You need to know that if they're trawling the likes of, I have to mention them, Rated People, Checker Trade, My Builder, Trusted Trader, FMB, Bark and so on, just looking for a cheap quote, And when I survey and talk to homeowners, they're often getting 10, 15, even 18 quotes.
18? What?
Absolutely. They get them from a combination of all these sources. They might only pick 2 or 3 from each one, but they're trawling to get a cheap price for the job.
Yeah, yeah.
So if these are cold inquiries off the web that you're dealing with, you're immediately under huge competition, and you can automatically be guaranteed there's somebody quoting a really stupid price with a very short quote with no breakdown whatsoever. And often these guys are below the cost of materials. And if you then quote anywhere near the reasonable amount of money for the job, you're straight in the bin because they think you're trying to rip them off. You're a decent builder. You don't want to waste all your time and effort visiting the site and doing a quote for a job you can't possibly win and earn any money on. If they're getting that many quotes, you don't want to be part of that bum fight. Move on. You won't regret doing it. I promise you. Okay. You know, the time you're going to spend on a decent quote is going to give you a much better return compared to all the time you're spending with a crappy customer who's got no intention of paying your price. And to be honest, they're just milking you for your expertise and your biggest asset, which is your time.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in a Dutch auction. And I say to homeowners, if you want a good builder and you're only going to get in touch with a few, then my builders will quote you. So these are the sort of conversations that builders need to have to pre-qualify the leads they get themselves. Remember, the good customers that you want to work for, they'll respect and appreciate a professional approach from you. And you know, if you do win in one of these free-for-alls, you can't win long-term. You're not going to earn any decent money on it. You're actually likely going to lose money. You also lost that time in your working year, which you could have replaced with a more profitable job. And the clients will recommend you as being brilliant and really cheap. So you'll make bugger all on the next job anyway. So it's absolutely pointless. And unfortunately, that's what the vast majority of builders I talk to are doing. They're spreading themselves far too thinly. They're trying to quote on almost everything that comes their way. They're winning very few. And when they win these jobs, they don't earn what they should be earning.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So step one then, if I'm right then, in summarizing, is on this making more money mission, is you're saying that the builder's first question should be, how many quotes are you getting in? And it does sound like the source of these inquiries is really important as well. You know, if I think some of these services that you were mentioning before, other services do exist, but advertising yourself on those kind of sites is just going to lead to a poor quality lead in any event. And you're going to get you might get a lot of inquiries, but they're going to be talking to loads of builders. So I think what you're saying is if it's more than 5 or 6 builders that the customer's getting involved with, you say, thanks for the opportunity, but I'm going to have to withdraw.
Yep.
Is that
Yep,
what you're
absolutely.
saying? Yeah,
I think 5 or 6 is probably a bit more than you want, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think, and at the end of the day, the customer's really stupid. They want to be spending all their time seeing builders and going through paperwork. 3 builders gives them a reasonable span of prices and gives them an idea of what they should be spending. Simply getting 5, 6 or more, definitely don't waste your time. You've got no chance if you want to charge the right sort of money. And what we're trying to do here is get people to charge the right money for a quality client.
Yeah. Okay.
You're not going to do that during a bun fight.
So if you've reduced the kind of pool of if you're talking to a customer who's got a more reduced pool, a more sensible pool of builders that they're getting quote for, and you're within your right to ask that question, you know, how many builders are you going to be talking to? It means that you're setting yourself up in a more realistic environment. So you're going to be able to quote your worth in that kind of pool, rather than setting yourself up against a whole host of cheaper builders.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think from memory, the number two on your list was understanding the customer's budget, and I think from my perspective, I think that's a really important. It's obviously really important to understand your customer's budget. I mean, like money isn't, of no object to anyone. But I've got to say, I was at a self-build show recently with my HBXL estimating service hat on, and I've got to say the number of homeowners that were carrying around in their head a number that did not bear anything on reality. And I felt for these guys, to be honest. I did feel for the customers, initially, because they've actually been misinformed, and that's from various sources of misinformation. So some of that was from their architect, the architect that had given them a design that perhaps exceeded their budget, or they'd used an out-of-date online calculator, or they'd started their journey a few years ago before lockdown, before this high cost inflation on materials and labor, and they've got all of these wrong, these misinformed numbers in their head. And they're just, yeah, as I say, it doesn't bear anything on reality. And on top of that, lots of these guys that I was talking to, they didn't have a full quotation in mind. So they'd use perhaps an online calculator, or they'd talk to their architect, but they hadn't considered the specification in any way. So what is the kind of the, what's the low point? What's the high point in terms of, is it a cheap installation, or is it, quality? Obviously everyone wants quality if your budget will stretch. So some of those numbers they were carrying around in their heads perhaps didn't even have internal decoration. It didn't have, like kitchen installations, all those kind of things. So they've got the wrong numbers in their head in the first place. So I guess they would need to either scale back their ideas to hit the budget, or they'd have to wait until they could afford it, I guess. So, what do you make of that?
Well, it's always been a real problem, and in inflationary times like this, it's getting worse, much worse.
Yeah.
So the second thing you need to question the client is, what is their actual budget for the job? And don't be afraid to ask. I don't think it's unreasonable to do so. And as you pointed out, where do they get their budget from? In my experience, most get the architect round and they ask them, look, before we pay you to do the drawings, how much is the job going to cost us? And there are some architects, not all, but a very high minority, who seem to deliberately underprice the value of the jobs. They know if they tell the customer the true value, they won't pay to have the plans drawn up. If they're project manager job, it's a bit more different because they're involved further down the line, so they tend to be a bit more accurate in the budgets. Only the other day, I was given a 40 square metre extension to look at by a homeowner. Excuse me for laughing. The architect was suggesting £1,000 a square metre. And I said, look, yeah, and it's not unusual, I've got to tell you. And I said, I'm afraid you're living in cloud cuckoo land. It's more like £2,500 a square metre, plus your internals. So your budget is way, way out.
Yeah.
You need to get proper quotes from trustworthy builders. If a job is above your budget, we can arrange finance, or we can help you value engineer the project to fit your budget. None of the builders I represent could afford to do the job correctly for that money. But most importantly, don't fall into the common trap of using someone who tells you they can do the job for the low price you are hoping to pay, because it won't end well. Now, my team has this sort of conversation every day. When we get inquiries in, we currently screen out 7 out of 10 of the leads we get in on behalf of our builder clients because of this sort of thing. Another big problem is recommends, where they know what their mate paid 5 years ago and they want to pay the same today. We've spoken a number of times during these broadcasts where builders get into what I call the recommendation rut. They're stuck in limbo doing jobs based on old rates and below inflation material prices. And the whole industry is currently in turmoil. Builders are pre-booking work and they're making no profit when they actually eventually come to do the work, primarily because they find it very difficult to go back and ask for more money to cover the increased material prices. If clients don't have the extra money or are unwilling to pay more than the original quote, then they're stuck. That's the other flip side to the equation. And you've got to bear in mind that even if you price the job accurately, we know that no job goes to plan and to timescale. There's always something that comes along to reduce your profit. So if you want to make a decent profit after all your hard work, then you have to start this journey with a really healthy margin. So the customer with an inadequate budget is a big no-no. Spend your time wisely working for clients that will give you a profit and help you grow your business.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I know we're going to talk more about that. If they've got an inadequate budget at the start, it's going to cause issues way down the line. Okay, so where next then? I guess it must be the specification, because that goes back around to that point that I was talking about before. They've got these misinformation, these inaccurate numbers of what it should cost in their head, and obviously the costs are massively impacted by the spec. That links back to your point on budget. So what's your advice there then, Simon?
Well, if the customer doesn't have a proper spec, you can't do a proper quote. So they've only got their outline planning. No way should you spend your time and effort working a detailed quote only to find down the line that you're twice the price they actually want to spend or have got the money for. So you need planning, drawing, structurals, building regs, and a second fixed spec to give a proper detailed quote. If they don't have it, and let's be honest, most don't when you first speak to them, then initially just give them a budget. Mr. Customer, it's going to be between 75 and 100 grand, depending on the quality you want. You've got to remember that your biggest problem, the cheap competitors, they love clients with no spec. They quote really cheaply. Everything then is deemed an extra once they've got the job. And if you do a quote without a proper spec, you're forever doing revisions, having meetings, spending time and effort writing the spec for the customer, actually, and continually quoting. It's a complete bloody nightmare, to be honest with you. They'll just suck the life out of you. They'll milk you for all your knowledge and your expertise, And often they'll end up just using a cheaper builder for the job on the back of what you've given them in the way of advice. So even when there is a full spec, you still need to look at the planning application before you do anything else. Look up the planning drawings on the web. You'll have a rough idea of the complexity of the job and its value. Is it one for you to steer clear of or not? Also, though, look on Google Earth and Street View, see the size of the property in the neighbourhood. Nothing my smarter builders do is they look up Zoopla or other websites are available. They find the value of the property, the values of other properties in the street, and what it might be worth once the work has been done. So basically, you're informed, you know what you're getting into, and that's all part of the pre-qualification as to whether this is the right job for you. Then, if the job is looking good, go to the site, talk to the customer. Don't give a price without seeing the site. It's madness. One of my builders was quoting on a job. So he went to the client and the client said, this is where my extension's coming to in the garden. And the guy said, no, I don't think it is actually. Looking at the plans, it's about 2 meters further in than you think it is. And he was the only builder that took the trouble to go around and walk the site and point that out. And he got that job. And it was just over £700,000, that job.
Again.
Just because he showed attention to detail. You know, good clients are looking for that, aren't they? And you all need to do this sort of thing on the inquiries you get yourself. Also, you want to check the site itself. Is there somewhere for the skip? Is there access for plant? Are there any other issues you know? Because you have to bear that in mind when you do your costings. Also, when you walk around, you might say, well, hang on a minute. If you move the wall here or you did this differently, you'd have a bit more space. It wouldn't cost you any more. Or it might cost you £5 more. You get all these additional benefits. No other builder wanted to go around and have that conversation or know how to do it differently. So if you're building a cost into the quote that the other builder hasn't done, you've also got to separate that out from the quote and highlight it. Don't just include it in your price, because no other builder is going to be quoting on a like-for-like basis with you. These little things, they show your professionalism and experience, and good clients are looking for this sort of thing.
Okie doke. I've just got a quick question for you before we go on to the next point. So when a customer doesn't have a specification, but they've got a lot of it. Maybe they've got the building regs drawings, they're up to building regs level. So you've got the structural side. But if they don't have a kind of internal specification, would you kind of encourage them to go through that process? Would you encourage the builder to take the time to kind of map this out so that when the customer is getting other quotes, he can say, well, I actually want, the brush, whatever, electrical points, or I want this level of kitchen, this kind of thing. So, because I don't know whether you're saying that having gone through that effort, that customer can then take that to the next builder, or at least it shows that the builder we're talking to, our viewers, are informed and they're taking the time to go through the process.
Okay.
What do you?
Okay, well, with the leads that we give our builders and the leads they pass us through to help them on, we have that conversation directly with the client and we guide the client.
Yeah.
We give them I was going to talk about it later, but we give them a guide to writing a second fixed spec. Okay. So what we tell them is, you don't know what you want at this stage of the game. Tilbury to allow a certain amount of budget for the windows, then you can compare the quote and the rest of the stuff. Yeah. Ideally, you, the builder, want to be given a pack of info that you can quote on accurately. It's not your job to spec it for the client, it's certainly not free of charge. If they want you to do a spec, charge them for it and let them give it to other people as well. But when we're involved, we do that for nothing. That's one of the reasons people come to us as a client, and why they're responsive to what we do and why they like our builders, because they can see they're getting a whole package here of help and advice and ending up using good, trustworthy builders at the end of the day. Yeah. So I don't think you should spend overly too much time writing spec for clients. It's their job to give you the spec. It's your job to quote and build on their spec, not to write it for them free of charge.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And I know we're going to come back round to the quotes and what's in the quote, what's not in a few minutes. But I was just interested on your perspective on that. Okay, so we're getting a picture now of what the builder is up against and the minimum you should demand from a quoting opportunity in order to charge the full value of the project. So I think you're saying, Simon, only select the jobs you really want to quote on, having done a bit of research as well. That means the homeowner is getting the right number of quotes, so not too many, and that they've got a proper budget. I guess that they've got finance in place that they're going to use to fund this project from somewhere. And I guess there's a question now about the right customer. That's an interesting one, because can you be choosy about your customer.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah,
Sorry,
this is really important. You've got to seek out the right customer, and they can actually be quite difficult to select. So the first part of the profiling process is understanding the purpose of the refurbishment, the rebuild, the extension, or whatever it is. Is it to live in? Is it an investment? Is it to make money from? If it's multi-occupancy or something like that, then they're doing it to make money, and you're not going to make the money you want to make because the customer wants a share of it. Whereas working directly for the householder, they're spending their money generally to improve the quality of their life. It's an emotional purchase, not a business decision. So if they like you, they'll use you, they'll pay more for you. And ideally, you also don't want to tender for work. It's tempting to go for these higher value jobs, but the tender process is designed to get the best value for the client, with terms and conditions invariably biased in the client's favour. And this is exactly the opposite of what you're trying to achieve. And there'll often be payment by valuation in arrears with retentions, penalty clauses. Generally speaking, your margins will be lower, your payments slower. And if you're dealing with a company, they can always go bust on you. I can't stress this enough. You're going to be investing a lot of time and effort and money, time is money as well, into getting that job. Time is your most valuable resource. So to maximize your profit, you've got to be choosing who you quote for. You have to pre-select, disregard the time wasters, and pick and choose your clients really well. My experience is the best customers are individuals where they've had a problem with the builder before. They're desperate to find a good one for this next project. They don't want the grief they went through last time, and they're prepared to pay a premium for you if you tick all the right boxes. Some of these clients will come through recommendations from previous jobs. Now that's great because you're a known quantity, but be aware though that the person that recommended you will inevitably tell them what they paid you. And that price may be 4 or 5 years out of date, or from a time when you're prepared to work on a much smaller profit margin. And as we were just pointing on, a good customer is someone with a full specification given to you because they mean business. And I suppose the other problem that good builders have is they're often getting recommended for a job by architects or friends or relatives. And the people that they're up against, they're often quite good builders actually, very similar in size to them. And in these circumstances, it's often a combination of all the little things that can bring you the job home. And at the Better Business Group, our job is to prove the differences between you. We make, for various means, we make our builders look better, and we highlight any detrimental things about their competitors. So the gap is bigger and they can see what they're getting in the way of the extra money they're paying.
Okay. So we've talked now about a good customer, but what about competitors? And as you were saying there about detrimental things about the competitors, it's really important to understand, I guess, who you're up against, isn't it, when quoting?
Yeah, well, the problem is there are just as many builders who quote cheap, knowing that they won't be doing it for that price in the long run, as there are good, honest builders pricing fairly. And then they'll either ask for more money at a later stage in the job or just walk off the site. And you've got to bear in mind, they're brilliant at point of sale and marketing themselves. You know, they look good, and unfortunately, the homeowner often falls for it. And that's what you're up against. That's the biggest reason that builders lose jobs. One of the reasons builders come to us to get help and to get good work is because we go behind the scenes, we do credit checks on the other builders quoting for the same job. We'll look at any CCJs, any county court judgments that they have against them, and you'll be amazed how many are out there. Any late or missed payments, any history of going bust. Are they in profit or are they losing serious amounts of money? On the face of it, these businesses look perfectly professional. And after all, this is where all their skills are, convincing people to use them. They never get a second job or recommend out of anybody, so they're very good at this point to sell stuff. And when we show owners our research, they can't thank us enough. They realise how close they came to handing over their life savings to these sort of people. And invariably then they go with a more expensive, Better Business Group builder who's properly monitored, insured, bound by our mediation procedures if a problem arises and so on.
Yeah. I guess as well, just on that point, I mean, I've seen it, you know, experienced it, that company names can change over time very subtly, and it's when the company has gone bust and reset up, you know. So it might have been, I don't know, Jones the Builders, and then at some point it becomes Jones the Builders and Sons, and then it's Jones Developments or whatever. So you think that the homeowner will think, well, I've seen this building company in the town for like the last decade, but actually they've been and gone multiple times. And obviously it's perfectly possible to do that, to set up another company but look like you've had a continuity of business over time, and they haven't. I don't know if you see
one
that.
thing we do when we do the background checks on the company that's quoting, we also check all the directors, the previous companies have been a director of, what happened to all of them. So often we're doing a string of these companies, and it costs us a lot of money actually, and more importantly time in analysing it and talking it through with the clients. But we do this because about 93% of the searches we do, we find detrimental information.
93%.
93% and serious reasons not to use people.
Yeah.
They're always giving us people that are cheap to do these credit searches on because they're tempted to use them. And my guys don't make huge profit margins. None of the guys listed this probably make huge profit margins. So when somebody's half your price, obviously it can't be done properly for the money. So there's something wrong somewhere. When we do the credit checks on them, it's always a disaster, which is great, you know, and that's why we do this service, because it makes our builders much better. Before we have the conversation, they thought our builder's ridiculously expensive and this cheap guy was the right money for the job. And what we then do is turn it on its head. They can see they're in for a problem if they use the cheap guy. Why would they risk their life savings on a potential problem like that, with a guy with a proven history of having county court judgments, bankruptcies and whatever? So this is why, this is part of the way we get our builders jobs at a premium price. And it's a very important thing to do.
Yeah. So it sounds like homeowners need your services, Simon, let alone the builder, because they could be walking into some quite expensive traps or difficulties with their projects. So I guess this just is all about how you're on the side of the builder. You can help justify why your members, the people that you mentor are at the price that they are. Because they're a good builder without all of these, detrimental kind of history and perhaps tactics, non-payment of their own suppliers, or they've been, started up and shut down and started up again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, say the builder has found then the right combination of customer, budget, project, time to quote, and I guess everyone listening is thinking, well, I can't just suddenly slap a load more money on top of my quote, can I? I can hear people's cogs whirring, just thinking, right, I can't just charge more. But I guess you've got, and I know actually, you have a different perspective on this, Simon.
We discussed this many times, haven't we? This is really where the psychology comes in. If you're serious about looking upwards, earning the money you deserve, you want to get off the tools, have a decent work-life balance, you've got to change your mindset and charge the full value of the work you do. The temptation is always just to pack in any old jobs to keep busy, keep your subbies with you, and that's completely the wrong way to go. You can all make more money for doing less, and I'll say that again because it's important. You can all make more money for doing less work. You can have a much better business and improve private life. You'll have money to spend and invest in the business. Once you're on board with the concept of doing fewer jobs, being more choosy, not cracking and taking the next job that comes along, then you're ready to take the next step. And the answer to your previous question, can you suddenly whack a load of money on, unfortunately, is both yes and no. In the short term, probably no to your existing client base. They know your previous prices, and with them, you've got to do it more gradually. You can't just turn your back on them because you need to keep the business ticking over whilst you make the changes needed to enable you to charge a premium price. But the good news is also, yes, you can put up your prices significantly, actually, to new customers with no price history with you.
Okay. So I think you were saying, Simon, that you'd spoken to an HBXL customer recently and that had wanted some mentoring, I think, from you. And he was about to quote on a job. Is that right?
Yeah. So I gave him a free mentoring session. He normally allowed just 20% markup on the overall individual job cost through HBXL. And I told him it was way too low. So I asked him to rethink how many jobs does he need to do in a year to have a profitable business. He doesn't need dozens of crappy low-paid jobs. His job cost came out at 80,000 through the software, and he added 20%, £16,000 markup. So he would have charged 96,000 plus VAT. So I looked into his business in a bit more detail. His running costs are calculated at 15% of his turnover. HBXL, as I'm sure you tell people, allows them to add these overheads into their initial setup. So he redid the quote. He also upped his margin by 5% to 25%, put that 15% overhead in. He then quoted £115 plus VAT, and with our help, he got that job.
That's 115,000 compared to the
96.
Yeah.
So he charged £19,000 extra for no more work. So he now has a more realistic value of his work. He's done it on one job. He can do it on every job. It doesn't matter if he doesn't get the next quote. There's plenty more inquiries coming along. And we actually then spoke to the customer, and they told us, in fact, the most expensive builder on that job was £135,000 plus VAT. So before our intervention, the guy was going to do it for 96,000, and another builder would get £135,000 for a similar job. Okay, he didn't win this one, but he's in business and he's winning jobs at this price level all the time. So he would have made £39,000 extra profit on that one job.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'd all like to have an extra £39,000 in our bank tomorrow.
Yeah.
God, I know I would. And just think what a difference that would make to both your business and your personal circumstances. That job was maybe 3 or 4 month contract. If you do 4 of those, say, a year, you're talking an extra £156,000 in the bank.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
Yes, believe me, when I can say that all of you can up your prices significantly. You all know builders are far more expensive than you. So this is perfectly achievable. There's headroom above all your prices that you can take a part of. What you also have to remember is that no one will pay more for you if you look no different to the cheaper guy. You've got to differentiate yourself to enable yourself to charge this premium. Talk to the customer, show your expertise. And as I mentioned, point out the things that other builders may have missed. Demonstrate your attention to detail. Be professional. I mean, we've done a whole previous video, Joe, on how the builder should market themselves.
Yeah, we haven't. That was an interesting one. You know, my background is marketing, and marketing isn't just your advertising. You know, how you get your name out there. It's about everything. It's your entire business. How, you know, all the touch points the builder has, so the customer, the homeowner has with you. How you present yourself. You know, how shiny your van is. The website. You know, how your email address. Is it a proper email address, or is it somebody at Hotmail? All of these things add up to create a picture that the homeowner has got of you, and if you put lots of those little improvements together, you've got a really good story to sell your business and premiumize your business. So I definitely recommend that video. It's called How to Promote Your Business to Homeowners, and you'll find it on the HBXL YouTube channel in the Power Hour playlist. So do watch that one. So I think I'm probably kind of jumping in on a couple of points I think you might make, because there was a lot we talked on in that session.
No change there, Joy. You do it on every webinar we do. So just to reiterate, to summarize that sort of previous webinar, you do need to differentiate yourself. So good logo, show your accreditations, your insurance information, as Joe said, a proper business email address, a website, an active Facebook page. Also look at the name of your business. I've had builders that have lost jobs because they had carpentry or joinery in their name, which was off-putting to a customer who wanted a double-story extension. Of course, you can do carpentry, that's a given if you can do a structural job, but you need to be recognised for the biggest and most complicated jobs that you do. So lose anything in your name that suggests you're just an individual tradesman. And then there's your personal profile, your appearance. You need to look smart when you turn up in a clean vehicle. Take notes, ask questions, because it's not just about the quote you do, it's about the whole package that they're seeing. And that's what tips you over the line. You also have to bear in mind that the sole aim of your initial quote is to make it to the shortlist. And that's what I'm doing for my builders. I'm getting them to the shortlist. I can't help them so much when they're in the shortlist, because at that stage, the customer thinks they're all the same. I've ruled out the ones with a bad credit check. The ones in the shortlist tend to be similar to yourself. So then it comes down to you. You've got to give it 110%. It's your personality, your knowledge, your expertise, all the things that I can't do on your behalf. I can get you guys to the shortlist, but then it's your personality and your company profile that will set you apart and win the job. The other thing to add is one of my bugbears, actually. At the end of the quote, every quote I see says, "We look forward to hearing from you." Well, no, you don't want to do that. That just means you're sitting around waiting for the phone to ring. No, what you say is, "We'll give you a call next Tuesday to answer any questions you might have." When you call them on the Tuesday, firstly, you've proven that you're keen on the job, and more importantly, you're reliable and you're professional. You phoned them when you said you would. So these are the little things that can make a huge difference at the end of the day.
Yeah. So I guess in any business situation, whether it's the client you're going to see, the bank, whatever, appearance and perception is really important, and that is very important as well in construction. And as I said, we could talk longer on this, but do check out that video that we were talking about. I'm interested as well, Simon, about this notion of shortlist, getting onto the shortlist initially, and then there's this further stage. So I know we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, but I've noted that. I've just jotted that down. Getting onto the shortlist first, and then making it through to the next round. It sounds like boxing here, but
Well,
I guess it feels like
it's a
it feels like
competition.
that. Yeah, it's a competition. So Simon, you talked briefly before about margins and overheads, and can we go back round to that? What kind of percentages again are we talking about? Because I think that people, or a lot of firms, just tend to slap on one percentage. They just say, well, I'm just going to add a markup. They kind of mix it all up into one markup.
Yeah,
I'm just going to stick 15% markup on, 20% markup on. But I know that's not, what you would recommend, of course.
No, I mean, it comes back to that mindset. What do you really want for your business at the end of the day here? Do you want to get off the tools, employ a site manager, have a small office, have someone doing your admin, somebody doing your bookkeeping? What's that going to cost you? Could you afford to do that today with the profits you're making? And the answer with most guys is no. So I say to builders, generally their overheads are between 15 to 18% of their turnover. And that's the minimum you need to be adding to your quotes. And that's nothing to do with the profit that you're making on the job. We haven't got to that yet. These are the costs of running your business, the leases, the standing orders, direct debits, and so on, your accountancy fees, all the things that come out of the bank when you have no work on.
Yeah.
HP Excel and the Better Business Group both can send you templates to calculate this accurately, which I would really advise guys to do. So what you also need to do is take a second copy of that spreadsheet and then recost the overheads for the business you want to be in a few years' time. So assume you already have that office, you've got an admin person, a pension for them and for you, extra van, extra tools and so on. You then need to cost your next job as if you already had those overheads today. And that way you'll have the money to do what you want to do in the future. And this is primarily why most builders are under costing. They're putting 10, 15% in overall, or 10% per overhead, 10% per profits, which barely covers their 18% overhead. And they can't work out whether they've got no money at the end of the year to invest in the business, rolling along all the time, earning bugger all, basically working to keep their subcontractors and their suppliers very happy. And at the end of the day, when they look at what they got in the pot for themselves, it's next to nothing. So to answer your question, we're looking at least 15 to 18% of your turnover going to your overheads. But of course, you need to calculate that accurately for your individual circumstances, and a good 20 to 30% profit margin on top of all of that. So on top of your overheads and on top of the material and labour and plant machinery cost for the job. And as we said in the Price and Profit Masterclass last year, putting your margin and your overheads on in this way doesn't necessarily still make you the right price for the job. What it's doing is it ensures that you don't lose money, or it makes you a bit of money. That doesn't mean that you're charging the true value of the job. So always remember that more established builders, they'll have higher overheads than you. So when they put their 20 or 30% markup on their costs, they're far more expensive than you. And as we saw earlier, if you price for profit and you prove your worth, you'll get that job. And that's then a springboard for getting a valuable recommendation. Then you go a bit more upmarket with the type of jobs you do, because you know you're capable of doing them. And also you know that you're capable of proving your worth. This way, you're on the path to having a successful, profitable business.
Yeah, that's interesting again. So that comes back round to knowing your competitors. And I guess in any given town, and my father was a builder and developer himself, and he always knew the other 2 or 3 builders that he'd probably be quoting up against if he was asked. A small market town. You can start to see, well, what kind of premises do they have? What car are they driving around? All those kind of things. You see them around town all the time. They're driving their Range Rover. They're doing all right, aren't they? They've got an office in the centre of town, right? Oh, okay. So you can kind of see where you are relative to them, I guess, in terms of and how therefore you pitch. So you can see that if they've got all this additional cost, then you are undoubtedly going to be cheaper if you're not driving around in that Range Rover. So you can start to think about how you can stretch that margin. So understanding what they're doing and researching a bit about your competitors with Simon's support as well is well worth it.
Yeah, in our previous videos, we said, if you're working from home and you're on the tools yourself, you'll definitely undercharge you by at least 20%. You're subsidising that job by keeping your overheads low. Other builders that don't have those circumstances, they pay for rented offices and staff and so on. They have to recoup that cost in the jobs. They're not on the tools themselves. They're a cost to the business. All that has to be added into the quote they do. So automatically, you're not charging the true value of the job. And to be honest, you're probably doing a better job than some of these bigger companies that just sub the work out. So there's no builder I see. I've spoken to more than 15,000 builders face to face over the years I've been doing this. Probably less than a handful are actually truly charging what they're worth. All of you guys are undercharging. You all know builders that are charging more than you and probably not doing as good a job. So this is the start of the path to really redress that balance and charge your true worth in the marketplace, you then have a profitable future.
Okay. And Simon, you think that this approach still stands up in the current climate with high inflation and the crazy rising costs of living, do you think?
Well, they are what they are, aren't they? And I'd go so far as to say probably it's more doable in the current climate than ever before. Competition is dwindling fast, actually. I prospect to get new builders on my books. I need them. I've got more leads than I can give out. I buy a list from the credit reference agents. I bought one 3 months ago. 30% of the builders I've phoned off that list are out of business. No. They're showing that they're currently in this house at the moment. You phone them up, I'm not going to be trading anymore at the end of the year. So, and this is primarily because of all the problems we've seen before with underpricing jobs. So I think in the current climate, it's definitely doable. So many builders are sitting in their comfort zones. They've worked out a system that keeps their diary full, keeps everybody busy, keeps them on a wage, but they're always undercharging by about 20%, particularly if they're working on recommends. And because the guy that recommended them had their job done 5 years ago and paid 60,000, the builder thinks, well, with inflation, that's probably around 70 grand now. But in reality, it's probably over 100 grand with the current circumstances. And as far as inflation's concerned, my view is you give the client an option. You say, look, give me a 20% deposit now and I'll pre-order some of the materials. And if you give me that 20% now, I'll then guarantee I won't put your price up unless the material price goes up more than 10% or whatever you agree with them. Alternatively, give me a 5% non-refundable deposit now to reserve the date in my diary. I won't book any other work in on the understanding I'm keeping it clear for you, but I'll recost the job 2 weeks before we start and you'll have to pay the increase in the costs. And one of my builders did that recently. And he got a 5% deposit a few months ago. He requoted it a couple of weeks ago, and he got an extra £30,000 on his quote. And the client signed the contract last Saturday. But for this to work, you'd have to be transparent about your material costs, which might not be ideal because you're hopefully putting a margin on those as well. So my preference is that the builder gets 5% non-refundable deposit. I think it's a win-win for everybody. I've had a few like this where the builder got their 5%, the job didn't go ahead, and they got the 5% for nothing. You need to show that you're really trying to replace that lost time with another job to offset the cost for the previous client. But in the current circumstances, building jobs don't start at short notice. And you presumably got another one booked in a few months. So the gap is too small to fit something in. So you're entitled to the 5%.
Yeah.
Customers know prices are going up. They're not stupid. They've only got to look at their own bills and look at the TV and the radio. You know, everything that goes into a building has got to be manufactured. All the raw materials are shooting up. So are the labour rates. If you haven't had it yet, your labour rates will be going up because as individual households are having cost increases, all the subcontractors and the labour is going to want more money without a shadow of a doubt. And in times like this, where there's lots of work on, those guys can charge really what they like. And if they don't get work from you, they'll get it from somebody else very easily.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly challenging. And I'm kind of, you suspect as much in terms of, the industry being in contraction somewhat, and obviously in terms of the number of firms, obviously that started previously with Brexit, but I don't blame lots of builders for thinking it's quite a challenging environment to be operating in. There's lots of headwinds, certainly. So can builders really I'm thinking, can they really afford to be strong and charge their worth, including that good profit margin right now? Is it not worth just getting the job in and having something in the books?
Well, you're in business for? Are you in business to be busy? You're in business to be a charity, or are you in business to make money? There's always a marketplace for good builders. There are always more expensive builders out there than you. They're winning jobs every day of the week. You know it. It's happening. Just look around you, and it will continue to happen. There's always building work going on, and there's always a market for expensive builders. The real question is, why aren't you able to charge the premium to the client base that you're working for now? Do you need really a different client base, or do you need to do things differently to make yourself more attractive to the wealthier clients? So it's a combination of all these things. You can't look at where you are now, and you can't look at the industry from the bubble you're currently in with your current jobs, doing the current work for the sort of clients you've got. You've got to look at the whole industry. And I have that perspective that an individual builder doesn't. And I know even when people tell me they're expensive, I get the surveys back and they show they're actually the cheapest of 18 quotes. And I can almost guarantee that everybody watching this webinar today is quoting too cheaply. There are firms out there charging way more than you are. And some builders are living in cloud cuckoo land. You look at their accounts, they tell me they're making good margins. In reality, they're making naff all money for the time and effort they put in. There's something going on somewhere. okay, you know, there's normally a bit of cash work floating around off the books, but nevertheless, very few people are making the money that they should be earning for the years of expertise they've got and the hard graft they put into the business. They'd be better off, a lot of them, just getting a job with somebody else for the aggravation they've got. There's a huge number out there, seriously stressed, probably watching this tonight. Many divorced multiple times. A lot of them have got no private life at all. So what I'm trying to get to for the builders that are remaining then, I think there's a huge opportunity out there. And I don't think that you should look at this negatively. I think it's good for builders. Now is the time to shine. It's time to do everything you can to prove to the clients you're right for the job. There's plenty of work out there. You can win jobs without a shadow of a doubt. It doesn't matter if you don't win a few, because you'll fill the diary with jobs that earn you good money and build your reputation. And that's a springboard for future business and profit and future recommendations. You know you're bloody good. You don't want to be recommended as good and cheap. You want to be recommended as relatively expensive but brilliant. You make it hassle-free. You're knowledgeable, and if there are any problems, you sort them out.
Yeah, I like that. You're bloody good and a bit expensive. You know, that's a nice kind of description, isn't it? Yeah. So let's look at the quote itself in a bit more detail and go back to those dodgy builders we were talking about before. And it's not necessarily dodgy builders, let's be honest. A lot of our listeners, they're really flipping busy, trying to get a quote quickly to a customer. You know, maybe they've run out of road, they ping over a short email confirming an approximate price and, you know, job done, quote in. But they're obviously just quoting the minimum, you know, to either get the quote off the desk or because they are a dodgy builder and they just want to get the work.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about building firms out there charging as little as possible to get the work. Some quote totally unrealistic pricing, they're an absolute joke. They're ripping clients off and they're giving the industry a bad name. But there are those builders that cost reasonably accurately but give the bare minimum. And I've seen some of these quotes, I've seen them recently. They're a masterclass in how to miss stuff out and come back for more money later. And I'm talking about a standard electrical installation for a lounge, a one pendant light and a double socket, £100 for sanitary. I see these quotes every day of the week, honestly. £2,000 for a set of bifold doors. Now, I'm not suggesting you play them at their own game, but don't make a rod for your own back by packing a quote with loads of cost that the other builder doesn't have. You cost the shell, the external envelope, and anything else they specified, importantly, by make, model, and quantity. And at that point, you get a reaction from the customer. And I'll give you a perfect example. Better Business Group builder quoted for a job, but he looked expensive in comparison to the other firm. He was £318,000. The cheaper builder was £250,000. The client had already told my builder he wasn't going to use me. He was way overpriced. I phoned the client. I said, look, this difference is bigger than my builder's profit margin. They cannot be like for like. Send me a job spec. Send me both the quotes. I'll do you a free quote comparison service. So I did it, and it turned out the other guy had missed huge amounts of stuff off. He didn't even abide by the actual structural spec that he was given. He quoted standard roof tiles. The customer spec said slate roof. He missed off £50,000 windows and doors. I did actually a 2-page summary of items that my builder quoted for that he didn't. It was £105,000 plus VAT that my builder included in his quote that the other guy hadn't. There was no proper second fix spec, no detailed electrical spec. My guy, in reality, quoted what he thought the customer would want, which is a disaster. You know, he was already in the bin. The other guy obviously quoted the reverse. He quoted the absolute minimum and cheap everything, cheap bifolds windows, cheap sanitary ware. If the client doesn't provide a detailed second fix spec, then none of the builders can be quoting like for like. So you've got to bear that in mind. Even with HBXL, if they want windows, I think you're linked to Crystal Windows, they can choose 3 different qualities of windows. Well, not everybody even uses Crystal. They all have their own window supplier. So none of these quotes are of comparable quality. And you really have to bear that in mind. This is major, major stuff here. This is the biggest reason builders lose jobs. You're not overquoting for what the client's going to have to pay at the end of the day, but you're overquoting compared to the other quotes they're receiving from perhaps not so honest or not so experienced other competitors. Yeah. And you're in the bin before you have a chance to come back and explain how you made that price up.
Yeah, because I think as an estimating software specialist, this is something that we've just, you and I have talked about before, and that I find challenging. So it's really interesting and refreshing, I should say, to get this perspective, because our estimating software is about estimating everything. But what you're saying is, once you have a sensible value, knowing that that is not going to be in your competitor's quote, you need to move that to an emissions area and say it could be in this order. And it might actually be that there's a gap, you know, a range rather, of from this to that. So it's fine to use, you know, use the estimating software to calculate that cost, but then actually be aware, if it isn't within a, you know, a formal specification, if you include it in the main quote above the line, you're going to be, you could apparently be over quoting compared to your competitors. So I think what you're saying in broad terms then is, you know, the shell, the external envelope, is obviously quite straightforward. The sticking point is generally the first and second fix. Although hearing what you're saying just about the tiles there, you know, that's fairly shocking, because the price of a concrete tile versus slate is significant. It's going to massively increase the cost of the roof. So the builder should be given the structural cost, gauge the reaction of the homeowner at that point, and then get into the specifics of the specification if it's not there, if it's not detailed.
I mean, definitely these variations we're talking about could be absolutely massive. You know, is it a £20,000 kitchen or a £5,000 kitchen? Is it £9,000 set of bifolds, or 2,000 or 4,000 or 5,000? Is it underfloor heating? What kind of underfloor heating is it? You want to be able to get in the door and find out what level of finish the customer's looking for. Are they looking for a gold plate kitchen with all the bells and whistles? What sort of bathrooms are they looking for? It's like saying, I'd like a car, please. Can you give me a price? Well, obviously there's a huge difference between a Bentley and a Mini. If you don't tell me exactly what you want, how can I give you a price? And critically, how can you compare my price to the other builders' prices? And actually, I think I pointed on it earlier, the Better Business Group has a guidance sheet to help clients write a detailed second fix spec. And I've got to tell you, that is really well received. It's something that most people have never considered. So that's why I always say to my builders, I don't want to see any PC sums within the quote whatsoever. I don't want to see any guesses of what you think they want. The solution, as we mentioned, is to include an emissions page with a wide range of prices on each item. Give them detail, but don't make it part of the headline cost. And that does four things, actually. Firstly, it shows you're interested in the job because you've been through it in detail. Secondly, you've listed out everything the customer needs to consider. 3, you've been helpful in giving them guide prices so they can decide exactly where they want to allocate their budget, because everybody has a budget. And 4, you're being honest and upfront. You're not hiding costs you can deem as extras later. So rather than all this being an extra, like my £318,000 line going straight in the bin before there's a chance to explain anything, just lumping it all together into a high price, you've turned it into a positive. So, of course, these cheap builders, these dodgy builders, they love it when there's no spec. They can quote cheap, they can conveniently forget to give the customer a heads up about first and second fix cost and so on. And if they come unstuck, they walk off the site with the money they've had in instalments so far. Another builder will pick up the piece at great cost to the customer. So it literally doesn't pay for the customers to cut corners. And when we have this conversation with the customers and we explain all this to them, they realise then that our builders are probably the proper money to do this job accurately, and they're going to have a grief and aggravation if they go with a cheaper guy. This is why my guys are able to win these jobs at a premium price. And it's why everybody out there can be charging more, winning jobs at a higher price than they are now.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess, and again, just I was alluding that to before, because I guess I feel like that you're kind of always pulling the wool over the customer's eyes by not including it in the quote from the outset. But I think I'm coming round to you. I don't think actually it's really pulling the wool over. It's allowing the builder to be comparable, I guess, is what you're trying to you're trying to create a level playing field, and that the builder needs to understand this when he's quoting. That's what that's the game other people are playing.
Yeah, I think we've argued the toss over this point for about 12 years, Joe. But yes. It's good to hear you coming round at last.
Yeah. So it takes a long time. I'm stubborn.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, you're not putting the wool over everybody's eyes. The builder says, I can't give you a definite price at this stage, but obviously when you know exactly what you want, I'll be happy to give you a firm price. In the meantime, depending on the quality and quantity you want for electrics, you should allow budget from cheap to expensive, from maybe, I don't know, 2,500 to 5,000 on a small job, whatever it is, but quite a wide range for your flooring, for your underfloor heating, for your boiler, for your sanitary ware, your windows, doors, and so on. And it all goes into emissions, not provisional sums. So you close your quote off without all this stuff. You have this then emissions page listing everything out. You obviously don't start the job until you've quoted everything properly. So the aim here, as we said, is to get to the shortlist. You get to the shortlist by doing this. Then you have a pre-contractual meeting. You iron out all this stuff, making sure everything is accurate before you both sign on the dotted line. So it's fully costed. if you put stuff into provisional sums and include it in the price, you could well be 20% more than everybody else's quote on this job. So as we said, you're in the bin before the opportunity to go back and say, well, hang on a minute, you haven't read through my quote properly. You won't get the chance to say, I'll happily come and re-quote you once you know exactly what you want, because they think you're an expensive builder. They don't want to talk to you anymore. So you shot yourself in the foot and you've done a load of work and spent time on it up to this point. So it's worth repeating again. The main aim of quoting here is purely to get to the shortlist. Nobody's going to look at your first quote and just give you the job. So everything about your quote has got to be professional, so that somebody else gets knocked out of the running instead of you. Nothing in it that's negative, only anything in it that's positive and likely to help you get to that shortlist.
Okay. Well, I think we now agree. We now agree. Hallelujah, hallelujah. And obviously, guys watching, knowing this, who know the software, you do have a section that you can add in these kind of omissions and assumptions. So it's not just called omissions, because it's not like you're missing anything out. I think that sounds perhaps overly negative. It's assumptions and omissions. These are the things that need to be noted. Okay, so we could debate that further, but we won't. So I'm interested to hear your perspective before we start to wrap up in a few minutes about negotiation and whether or not the builder should consider, negotiation. How hard and fast are you on this particular subject? Is it take it or leave it, or is there a bit of wiggle room in your opinion?
No, you've got to be realistic. If the customer says it's a deal breaker, this is my budget, well, first thing you try and do is value engineer within the budget.
Yeah.
So why don't we change the spec on the bathroom or do the ensuite later to come within your budget? You don't just say, well, look, I knocked £5,000 off if you sign here, because that makes them think you just added the £5,000 extra on in the first place. If you're serious about the job and it's a job you want and you've got good margins in it, what you say is, look, I'll renegotiate the whole job with my suppliers and my subcontractors. I'll give it the best chance I can. I'll come back to you in a day or so. When you come back, you say, yeah, I've got it down by some strange amount, £983.57. And the customer will be happy that you worked on their behalf to try and accommodate them. In reality, what you may have just done is reduce your profit slightly, having added a generous margin in the first place. And this is another reason why you need to go with a good margin at day one. I had the situation actually where the customer said to my builder, look, you're 50 grand more expensive than the other quotes we've had, but we really liked you. You're local. Can you help us out? This is quite a big project and we want it to go ahead, but we can't pay your price. So my builder phoned me and he said, what do? We need the job. We've got no work on. And it's in a good area. I really would like the job. So I looked at my records and I said, well, funny enough, recently we had a chat to that customer and they told us that your quote was 50 grand cheaper than the other guy on the shortlist. They're just trying it on with you. I said, don't come down a penny. I said, you're already underselling yourself in actual fact. And she was a lady builder actually, and she said, look, I really don't know, I've got the guts for that. I need the job. In the end of the day anyway, she stuck to her guns. She got the job. She made £50,000 extra profits, what she would have before. Okay. And that 50 grand actually was more profit than she made in the whole of the previous year.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this is how significant these sort of negotiations are. And more importantly, she now had the confidence to put the price up on all future quotes, so she knew it was achievable. Another builder is charging 50 grand more than she actually did on that job. So clients will always try and bleed you dry. They want the best builder for the cheapest possible price. You've got to know what your parameters are and you don't go below them. Everybody's entitled to try and get a good deal, but you're not in this to fill your diary with people that haggle overly at the beginning of the process. You need to be confident that you've got the money to complete that project and they're willing to part with it and pay you. If they're overstretched at the beginning, then what happens when you discover that the footing's got to go down an extra metre, or there's other unforeseen works, or they want extras? They'd be much more likely to engineer a dispute to avoid your final payment. So you have to go with your gut feel. And builders have normally seen enough clients to get a feel for these sort of people. And you don't want to take a job in desperation, thinking, well, this looks like a bit of a crappy customer, but it's a job and I need it. Even if you take that job on with a low profit, long term, you can't possibly win. You've lost the time in the diary, which you could have replaced with more profitable work. And also the client will recommend you as being bloody good and cheap, as we said before. So you'll be building low profit margins into the business for the future, quite the reverse of what we're trying to achieve by this webinar.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's about holding firm, but if you've got a good customer there, working with them, thinking about how you can value engineer if possible. And I guess if you have got all those assumptions laid out, you've actually got some room to maneuver with them, in fact, because you've said, look, we have these ranges. If you want this project, you're going to have to come down a bit on the quality range. You know, you're going to have to think about those extras. And as you're saying, not filling the diary with a dud job, toughing it out perhaps until the right job comes along, which I really understand is very challenging for people listening. But as you said, there's a lot of work out there. There's fewer firms, that's for sure. So another project should come along. And obviously, Simon, with your expertise and the leads that you have with the Better Business Group, I guess you can help listeners fill their diary with some of these quality jobs.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah, it sounds as like, you know, your service is almost like a critical friend. You're kind of like, you know, help, you know, build a Samaritan. What should I do in this situation? You know,
it's a lonely old game, isn't it? Who do you really talk to get some honest and helpful advice? No other builder's going to tell you the truth of their day-to-day workings. They tell you, to be honest, what they think you want to hear.
Yeah.
The perspective I have, we deal with some very successful and profitable builders, and you know, we've been doing this for a long time now. We can see what these guys have done that makes it work for them. We can help builders at a lower level avoid the costly mistakes they made to get to the same level in business. So, you know, we can help them jump 2 or 3 levels straight away and charge this extra 15 to 20%. It isn't, I'm not saying it's easy. It's not easy. It's hard work, actually, but it's perfectly achievable. And it's something you've got to do. If you don't do it, where are you going to be in a few years' time? When you're in your 60s, you're going to be working down a trench on a cold, damp morning still, you know, with a bad back and a bad heart and so on. You've got to look at where your future lies, and this can change by the next job you do. That's the benefit of this industry. If you price the next job wrongly, you know, you're in the crap, aren't you? But if you price it well, it's life transforming, and that's the path that we're trying to get people on.
Yeah. So I was just saying, you need to work out how many jobs you want to do in the year and how much stress can you take in terms of how many you're trying to pack in. As you're saying, it's about paring that down to a manageable level, but knowing what profit you want to make through the year and on those jobs, and then think about your overheads based on the business you want to become, not based on today, and then price this new work as though you're already that firm, so that you're already the premium builder, that you already have the office, the admin, the team supporting you. I guess then that'll indicate how many jobs over the next 12 months you need to do, and it might take the pressure off when you're turning down work, because you've kind of got a sense of, well, I need 4 jobs making me this across the year rather than I need 7 or 10, and they're all going to be, you know, lower value and tight margins. I guess you have a confidence to say, no, I don't want that job.
I saw a guy last week, he does 5 jobs at a time. He's running himself ragged. There's no personal life at all. And the business was worth minus £25,000. Well, you could do one decent job, knock all that on the head and earn more money, have a profitable business and have a life, to be honest with you. The other flip side to this is you'll be surprised how many builders lose jobs because they're too cheap. The client doesn't think they could do the job properly for the money they're quoting. They'll only ever tell you when they don't want to use you that it's because you're expensive. So you think, well, blimey, similar job, I need to cut my price down a bit on the next job. And this is why builders set at a level that keeps their diary full, where they're always undercharging. Often there's a huge variety of other reasons why they haven't chosen you. And often it's what the other guys are doing better than you. That's why we're very particular about doing all the little things right. So you need to bear that in mind and take what they tell you with a pinch of salt. Yeah.
Okay. So you said to me as well that, you know, if you're negotiating from a point of weakness, the customer's going to see through it. Is that your perspective, would you say, Simon?
Absolutely. You know, when I buy stuff, I negotiate as hard as I can. I'm sure you do as well. That's our job as purchasers, isn't it? But if you negotiate from weakness, the customer will see through it straight away. You can't kowtow to them because you're not going to get better once the job starts. They're going to want loads of extras and stuff as well. If they see you're going to bend over every opportunity. So you've got to set the tone. You're not going to be mucked around. You're not going to be bleed all over the carpet for them. It's a professional relationship. That way they know what you quoted for is what you're going to do. And good clients know that they get what they pay for. If they want variations or extras or something unforeseen comes up, you requote it and they have to pay for it. And I think this is major stuff, actually, and it's a big reason why builders lose jobs. They kowtow a bit at the beginning, they do a few extras, then it gets to be a few more extras. The client keeps asking until you finally say, well, hang on a minute, you know, I've had enough here, I can't do any more for free. And often they save the extras to the end, which gives the client a good reason not to pay the final payment. So it's lose, lose, lose if you do this. Quote properly, know you're making a good margin, add a bit extra in for the, I call it the FAF. I won't explain what that says word for word. The faff about factor, should we call it?
Yeah.
Because there is going to be some on the job. You need to allow a margin for that in addition to the individual costs for the job and your overheads. Okay.
Yeah.
If you do all this, you'll win jobs, you'll make money.
Yeah. Okay. All righty. So onwards. Well, I did say that there was some golden nuggets in here, and I wasn't wrong there. Simon, it's always really interesting hearing your perspective on things. So Simon, as we finish, is there anything else that that you'd like to add at this point?
Yeah, I think this all comes down to between you and your competitors. You need to do all these little things right. Take time, work on good quotes for good customers, spend the extra time and detail on it, differentiate yourself from the cheaper guys. All these things we've spoken before. Look up our previous webinars. There's lots of free guidance on there on what you need to do. Bear in mind, the market is there. You're good enough to charge a premium. Don't waste time. You're definitely undercharging now, in my experience. The world's your oyster. It can change by the next job you do. Make every day count. Start this journey tomorrow. Work out your cost, add an extra margin in tomorrow, and you're on a path to a successful, profitable future. You'll have an asset you can sell or pass on. You can have a private life, and you can have money in the bank. It's definitely doable.
Yeah. And I guess with all of this kind of psychology of quoting here, I guess it's also worth pointing out that the builder is adding value to the customer's property. And the homeowners, got to pay for that. It's got to be worth paying for.
Absolutely. I mean, I've got a guy at the moment. He's given me two guys to help him with. One's a project 1.4 million,
wow.
And he cost him 2.5 years. But he's worried now with the price increases that come along. After doing all this job, he's only going to make £150,000 out of it. He's actually asked me to sell that project on to other builders. So I asked him, what about the other project? Is he doing that to make money, or is he doing it to live in? And very interesting, actually, he said, well, this one I'm doing to live in. The second one I'm doing to live in myself. Mm-hmm. And I know I'm going to be spending at least £100,000 more than the property is going to be worth in the current marketplace. Well, I don't care about that. I'm going to be there for at least 10 years. I'll be using all the facilities. So it's a different kind of situation. So it really does depend whether the client's doing this to make money or to sell on or to live in. And I have to say that most people we're going to be talking to are doing it to live in here. So this cost equation is not what it used to be. It cost a fortune to move. I'm in the process of still doing it myself. I know how much money I spent already. I could have spent that on my previous property. Most people like where they are. They just want a better living environment, particularly if they're having to work from home now. Yeah. So often they will spend a lot more than the added value that you bring to the property in the current climate.
Yeah, okay? Yeah. I think that's why it's really important, as you say, the type of client. I remember talking to one of our builders. He uses Estimator Express, and he used to do work for student lets, refurbing student lets for landlords, and he'd churn through them. I don't know, he was somewhere in a big city like Manchester or something. And it was really hard graft, and he was hardly making any money, and he was getting no job satisfaction because he was always putting crap installations in. It was the cheapest kitchens, the cheapest doors, the cheapest everything just was cheap, and but he was doing loads of these jobs, and he was running around like a crazy fool. And then he was asked to do a quote for an extension, and he thought, well, do you know what, I haven't done that type of work before, but I'll use Estimator Express, price it up. He was surprised how much in that one job he could make compared to doing, I don't know, 5, 10 of these refurbs on these other projects. And he had one customer to, one project to deal with, not 5 or 10. I can't remember the exact specifics of it. And he was able to kind of work with a homeowner that was interested in quality, which was a completely different experience.
Yeah. I mean, this industry can be a really, really hard way to make a living. Certainly if you're on the tools, you've got to plan for the inevitable when you're not physically able to do the manual work yourself. Don't waste time. Start the journey to a more profitable future immediately. Good, well-paying jobs are out there. As I said, make every day count.
Yeah.
That's the end of my talk.
Well, I was just going to say, I've been finding it really interesting hearing you talk about the customer's psyche and reading between the lines and working out whether they're a good fit and are they the right kind of project. I mean, to some degree, it sounds a bit like a builder needs to have a psychology degree to tell whether they're onto a good client or not. But
no, I think if you've seen enough clients, the signs are always there, aren't they? You know in your heart whether they're penny pinchers and they're likely to give you grief. Some are very professional con artists. So the way to protect that, which we'll perhaps go into the next section or next webinar we do, is how to protect yourself with payment terms and contracts That's weeds out the guys that are looking to knock you in the first place. That's the next stage. Once you're dealing with them, you make them pay a big deposit, you have tough contract terms, so you're working on their money all the time. So there's very little risk in them trying to knock you at the end of the job. But that's a detailed discussion for another webinar to do.
And I guess glaring signals then, as we were just started to talk about, and builders, I'm sure the listeners, see all of these, but are they querying every single item? Are they penny pinching right at the start? Are they looking for a cheap job? Are they looking to pay cash? How many, people are they getting to quote because they want the cheapest? And I guess asking why they want those 10 cheap, quotes. What's their perspective?
It's only because they're trawling, isn't it? And the other thing, it's a major job. Is it just the wife you're talking to or just the husband? Surely it's a joint decision. If they're serious about using you, they'll both be there for the meetings to discuss it in depth with you. That's another pointer.
Okay. Well, I guess that some of these points are another conversation altogether for another time, because I know we could talk for lots longer, and I think we've been around an hour or so today. So I think we'll draw our chat to a close and leave our viewers for this evening. But thank you very much, Simon, for your time, and thanks everybody for watching. And I hope you found it useful. I mean, I certainly have, and Simon certainly changed my perspective on a couple of things.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Joe, for having me on again. It's been a pleasure. Look forward to the next one.
Yeah, thank you, guys. And if you would like to spend some time talking to Simon and using his mentorship services, as we said, there's a free appointment with Simon, so there's absolutely no obligation. I'm not trying to be in sales mode here, but you can hear just from what Simon's talking, he can really help you shape the future of your business and take some of the stress out of it. So it's obviously about making money, but it's also reducing some of the stress, some of the hecticness that we all experience in our working lives. And I guess it's not just making good money. It's not just about getting by. It's having a healthy work-life balance, and all of us want one of those. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
And everyone who's got Estimator Express, obviously, hearing what Simon was saying about today in terms of the assumptions and emission section, perhaps using that, making that work harder for you within your quotes, so you're more like for like in terms of how your competitors are quoting. And obviously, shameless plug again with Estimator Express, making sure you're up to date with the latest materials prices. So have either your software subscription or your support and updates in place so that you're plugged into the latest prices, because there's still significant price inflation. It's 10-11% now this year, on top of the previous 20-odd% that we experienced last year. We've had labour increases again recently in the software. Those would feed into the software. And as well, building regs have changed in mid-June. There's a whole webinar on that. That will add some cost to your projects, because it's all, particularly from extensions, it's all about insulation. July, our price updates, we've just experienced big increases in prices of insulation. That's funny, isn't it? Timed with the building regs update, so insulation has gone up. So if you're quoting for extensions, make sure that you're the right side of building regs and are pricing with up-to-date rates on that. And obviously those quotes that come out of Estimator Express, they're going to make you look professional and reliable. And don't forget, of course, you can tweak the covering letter that comes with the software. If you want to say that you want to quote, going to give them a call next Tuesday after your quote's been sent, you can change that copy. You don't need the wording. You don't have to use it verbatim out of the box. You can edit it and you can save it so that it reflects exactly what you want to say. And it will save that, and it'll be there for the future quotes that you've got. So good tip there from Simon. And I guess what I'm feeling is that not all of this is going to happen overnight, but if you put in place perhaps Simon's recommendations, maybe one at a time, you're going to find yourself changing your business for the better. I know Rome wasn't built in a day, as they say, but you can certainly improve things steadily. And as I've mentioned, as a member of Team HB Excel, Simon's kindly agreed to have a chat with all of you listeners over the phone. And obviously that's individually, not all together at one time. You can have a one-to-one with Simon for an hour or so about your own business. And hopefully Simon can give you a few ideas in that time about how you can nurture your business and strengthen it. And I've got to say, genuinely, Simon's possibly the only mentor to builders based in the UK that I'm aware of, and certainly not with his level of experience. So I think it's an opportunity not to be missed to get your business moving in the right direction. And you can call our team to do that, or you can go online to make your booking, and details will pop up in a minute at the end of this session. And if you'd like to discuss any of your software products from HP Excel, you'll also see our phone number and email address on screen as well. So I'll take a breath. Whew. Been talking a lot. So thank you, Simon, as I said earlier. And we'll be with you again, not in the not too distant future, to talk part 2 about improving your business and ultimately with the aim of making more money and reducing the stress within it. So guys listening, look out for an email on that shortly. All right. Cheers, Simon.
Thanks a lot, Jo. Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Give us a ring.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.